Hello, and welcome, Sleepy Planet Show. Find a comfortable position. Allow your body to feel heavy, supported by the surface beneath you. Let go of the day, its worries, its lists, its noises, and allow them to drift away like motes of dust in a sunbeam. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel a wave of relaxation wash over you. From the tips of your toes to the crown of your head. Tonight, we are not going to a place of bright lights or loud adventures. We are journeying back, far back, to the very beginning of thought, to the quiet, dark space before time itself had a name. We are going to wander through the long, winding tales of the ancient Greeks, not as grand heroes, but as quiet observers. These stories are old, worn smooth by centuries of telling, and they are perfect for drifting away. There is nothing you need to do, nothing to remember. Simply allow my voice to be a gentle guide, a soft current in the river of your consciousness as we explore the entire story of Greek mythology. From the first stirrings in the void to the final echoes of the gods. Let your mind grow quiet. Let the darkness behind your eyes feel soft and welcoming. And let us begin. Part 1. The first stirrings. Primordials. Before the sky, before the sea, before the mountains, there was only chaos. Do not think of chaos as we know it now, not as noise or confusion. Picture instead a vast, silent, formless expanse, a quiet, limitless abyss. It was not empty, but it was not full. It simply was. It was the potential for everything, a deep and patient darkness, holding its breath. From this profound stillness, the first beings began to emerge, not with a bang, but with a slow, deliberate unfurling, like a fern in a silent forest. The first was Gaia, Mother Earth. Imagine her as a wide, stable plain, the very foundation of all that would come. She was the ground beneath your feet, the rich soil, the solid rock. She was substance, and she was life. With her emerged Tartarus, the great pit beneath, a place of deep, primordial darkness, far below even the darkest caves. It it was not a place of punishment yet, merely the deepest root of existence. And then there was Eros, not the mischievous cherub with a bow, but the ancient, powerful force of love and desire. Eros was the principle of attraction, the cosmic energy that would draw all things together, the reason a universe could form instead of remaining separate particles in the dark. Out of the endless expanse of chaos, two more beings took shape. Erebus, the embodiment of profound darkness, and his sister, Nyx, the goddess of the deep and starless night. They were the shadows and the twilight from which all other shades would be born. Together, Erebus and Nyx brought forth children of their own. Aether, who was the pure, bright upper air that the gods would breathe, and Hemera, the gentle light of day. And so the first order began to form. Day would follow night, and the bright air would sit above the world. Gaia, the great earth, now existed in this new reality of light and dark. But she was lonely. She looked up into the vastness and longed for a companion, a counterpart. And so from herself she brought forth Uranus, the sky. He was a vast starry dome arching over her completely. He was the rain that would nourish her, the heavens that would witness all. Gaia also brought forth Pontus, the barren deep sea, and the Uria, the rugged mountains. The world was now taking a shape we might recognize. The earth, the sky, the sea. And it was quiet, a deep, resonant quiet. Gaia and Uranus, earth and sky, looked upon one another, and through the power of ancient Eros, they fell into a deep and powerful embrace. Their union would fill the world with life, but it would also begin the first great cycle of sorrow and conflict, a pattern that would echo down through all the ages to come. The first children of Gaia and Uranus were not beautiful. They were raw, primal forces. First came the Hakantikures, the 100-handed ones. 3 brothers, each with 100 powerful arms and 50 heads. They were beings of immense chaotic strength, the personification of earthquakes and volcanic fury. Then there came the 3 Cyclops, giants with a single blazing eye in the center of their foreheads. They were master craftsmen, able to harness the power of lightning and thunder. Uranus looked upon these powerful, monstrous children with fear and disgust. They were a reminder of the raw chaos from which he came. he could not bear to see them, so he took them and thrust them back into the womb of Gaia, deep within the earth, causing her immense pain and sorrow. Gaia groaned under the weight of her imprisoned children, her heart filled with a slow burning anger towards Uranus. Their embrace, which had once been loving, now felt like a prison, and so she continued to bear children. But these were different. They were the 12 Titans. 6 sons and 6 daughters, more beautiful and divine than their older siblings. There was Oceanus, the great river that encircled the world; Coeus, the Titan of intellect; Crius and Hyperion, the Titan of heavenly light; Iapetus, the father of mankind's ancestors; and the youngest, the most ambitious and cunning, Cronus. The daughters were just as majestic. Thea, the Titaness of sight and shimmering gold; Rhea, the mother of the future gods; Themis, the embodiment of divine law and order; Mnemosyne, the Titaness of memory; Phoebe, associated with the moon and prophecy; and Tethys, the mother of the rivers and ocean nymphs. They were a golden generation, powerful and majestic. Yet Gaia could not forget her children suffering deep within her. Her love for Uranus had turned to resentment. She fashioned a tool from within herself, a great sickle made of the hardest flint, or adamant. She gathered her Titan children and spoke to them of their father's cruelty. She asked for a volunteer to help her end his tyranny. All the Titans were silent, filled with fear of their powerful father, the starry sky. All except one. Cronus, the youngest, stepped forward. His heart was filled with jealousy and ambition. He took the great sickle from his mother's hand. That night, as Uranus descended to embrace Gaia, Cronus lay in ambush. He took the sharp sickle and committed a terrible act. He separated his father from his mother, the sky from the earth forever. From the drops of his father's blood that fell upon the earth, Gaia conceived yet more children, the Erinyes, or the Furies, terrifying goddesses of vengeance who would pursue those who spilled family blood, and the Gigantes, a race of powerful giants. And from the sea foam where the essence of Uranus had fallen, a being of unimaginable beauty arose. She floated to the shore on a scallop shell, and where she stepped, flowers bloomed. This was Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and desire, born not of a womb, but of cosmic violence and the churning sea. With Uranus overthrown, a new age began, the age of the Titans. Cronus, the ambitious son, took his father's place as the king of the cosmos. The world settled into a new order under his rule, but the first great betrayal had already occurred, and the Furies, born of that act, now walked the earth waiting. The quiet of the beginning was over, and the seeds of the next great conflict were already sown. Part 2: The Reign of the Titans and the Hidden Child. Cronus now sat on the throne of the universe. He took his sister, the gentle Rhea, as his queen. The other Titans took their places as rulers of the various corners of the cosmos. This period was later remembered by mortals as the Golden Age, a time of peace and plenty, where the earth gave its fruit freely and no one grew old. But a shadow hung over Cronus's reign. He had betrayed his father, and he lived in constant fear that his own children would do the same to him. He had not freed his monstrous siblings, the Hecatoncheires and the Cyclops, from their prison in Tartarus. He kept them locked away, just as his father had done, for he feared their power. His fear was given voice by a prophecy from his own wounded parents, Gaia and Uranus. They warned him that he was fated to be overthrown by one of his own children. This prophecy consumed him. So, as his and Rhea's children were born one by one, Cronus did something even more monstrous than his father. As Rhea presented him with their firstborn, the lovely Hestia, goddess of the hearth, he took the infant and swallowed her whole. Rhea was horrified, her heart shattered, for she was powerless against her husband. The same fate befell their next children: Demeter, the future goddess of the harvest; Hera, the future queen; Hades, the future lord of the underworld; and Poseidon, the future king of the sea. One by one they were born, and one by one they were swallowed by their paranoid father, imprisoned not in the earth, but in the dark belly of the Titan King. Rhea was lost in a sea of grief. She was desperate to save her next child, the one foretold to be the greatest of all. She went to her mother, Gaia, and her father, Uranus, and begged them for help. They listened to her sorrowful plea and devised a plan. When her time came, Rhea traveled in secret to the island of Crete. In a deep, dark cave on Mount Ida, she gave birth to her sixth child, a son. She named him Zeus. Then she returned to Cronus, but instead of a child, she presented him with a large stone wrapped in swaddling cloths. Blinded by his fear and haste, Cronus did not notice the deception. He took the heavy bundle and swallowed it, believing he had once again cheated fate. Meanwhile, the infant Zeus was safe in the Cretan cave. He was raised in secret, hidden from his father's knowledge. He was nursed by nymphs, most notably a goat named Amalthea, whose horn, when broken, would become the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. The Curetes, armored male dancers, would clash their shields and spears whenever the baby cried, so that the sound would not reach the ears of Cronus. Zeus grew to manhood with incredible speed, his divine power flourishing in the wildness of the mountain. He was strong, clever, and filled with a sense of justice, determined to right the wrongs his father had committed. When he was grown, he sought the counsel of Metis, a wise Titaness, a daughter of Oceanus. She was the goddess of cunning and wisdom. Together, they formulated a plan to free his siblings. Metis prepared a special potion, an emetic, and disguised, Zeus managed to become his father's cupbearer. He served Cronus the potion mixed with his wine. The effect was immediate and powerful. Cronus was overcome with nausea and began to retch. First, he brought up the stone he had swallowed, which was later placed at Delphi as a sacred object, the Omphalos stone. Then, one by one, he regurgitated his children, not as infants, but as fully grown, powerful gods. Out came Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. They were whole and unharmed, and eternally grateful to their younger brother for their freedom. United at last, the 6 young gods stood together on Mount Olympus and declared war on their father and the Titans who supported him. This was the beginning of the great war known as the Titanomachy. It was not a short battle. It was a cosmic conflict that raged for 10 long years. The newer gods, the Olympians, fought from their fortress on Mount Olympus. The older gods, the Titans, fought from their stronghold on Mount Othrys. The universe trembled with the force of their conflict. Mountains were torn from their roots and thrown as weapons. The seas boiled and the sky flashed with terrible light. But for 10 years, neither side could gain the advantage. The power of the Olympians was matched by the raw, ancient strength of the Titans. Seeing the stalemate, Gaia, the ancient Earth Mother, once again offered her counsel. She told her grandson Zeus that he would only be victorious if he freed those whom his father and grandfather had imprisoned. He needed the help of the Hecatoncheires and the Cyclopes. So Zeus descended into the dark depths of Tartarus. He slew their guard and freed his long-forgotten uncles. They were immensely grateful. The Cyclopes, masters of the forge, immediately set to work creating magnificent weapons for the gods who had freed them. For Zeus, they forged the thunderbolt, a weapon that harnessed the very power of lightning. For Poseidon, they created the trident, a 3-pronged spear with which he could shake the earth and command the waves. And for Hades, they crafted the helm of darkness, a cap that would make its wearer completely invisible. With these new allies and their powerful new weapons, the tide of the war began to turn. The Olympians launched their final assault. Zeus ascended to the highest peaks of Olympus and unleashed the full fury of his thunderbolts. The sky itself seemed to be on fire. Poseidon struck the foundations of Mount Othrys with his trident, shaking the Titan's fortress to its core. Hades moved unseen among the enemy, creating chaos and confusion. And the Hecatoncheires, with their 300 arms, unleashed a barrage of stones and boulders, a landslide of cosmic proportions that overwhelmed the Titan forces. The Titans were finally defeated. Most of them were bound in unbreakable chains and cast down into the deepest part of the abyss, into Tartarus, guarded forever by their 100-handed brothers. A few, who had not fought against the Olympians, like Oceanus and the Titanesses, were spared. But for the leaders, special punishments were devised. For Atlas, a Titan who had led the charge against Zeus, his punishment was to stand at the western edge of the world and hold up the heavens on his shoulders for all eternity, forever separating Uranos from Gaia. And Zeus, the deposed king, the child-swallowing god of time, was imprisoned in the darkest pit of Tartarus, his reign of fear finally at an end. The war was over. The universe was quiet once more, but it was a new kind of quiet, the quiet of a new order. The age of the Titans was finished. The age of the Olympians had just begun. Part 3. The Olympian Order and its Challenges. With the universe finally at peace, the three victorious brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, decided to divide the world among themselves. They cast lots to determine their domains. Zeus, the leader and youngest brother, drew the longest lot. He became the undisputed king of the gods and all mortals. His domain was the vast open sky, the air, and the clouds. His symbols were the thunderbolt and the eagle. He would rule from his golden palace atop Mount Olympus. Poseidon drew the second lot. He was given dominion over the seas and all the waters of the world. He was the earth shaker, the god of oceans, rivers, and earthquakes. From his coral palace at the bottom of the sea, he would command the waves with his mighty trident. And Hades drew the shortest lot. His kingdom was the underworld, the vast, shadowy realm beneath the earth where the souls of the dead resided. He was the ruler of the departed, a grim and wealthy king, for all the precious metals and gems of the earth were his. Though he was one of the great gods, he was technically not an Olympian, as he rarely, if ever, visited Mount Olympus, preferring the quiet solitude of his own dark kingdom. And so the Olympian family was established. At its head were Zeus and his sister wife Hera, who became the queen of the gods, the protector of marriage and childbirth, though her own marriage would be filled with turmoil due to Zeus's constant infidelities. The other founding Olympians were Hestia, the gentle goddess of the hearth and home, who was so peaceful she eventually gave up her seat to another, and Demeter, the solemn goddess of the grain, the harvest, and the seasons. Next generation of Olympians were mostly children of Zeus. There was Athena, born in the most curious way. Zeus had been warned that a child he had with the wise Metis would be powerful enough to overthrow him. To prevent this, he swallowed the pregnant Metis whole, but the child continued to grow within him, and soon he was struck with a splitting headache. He called for Hephaestus, the god of the forge, to strike his head with an axe. From the wound, Athena sprang forth, fully grown, clad in armor and with a mighty battle cry. She was the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and righteous warfare. Then there were the twins, Apollo and Artemis, children of Zeus and the Titaness Leto. Hera, in a jealous rage, had forbidden any land under the sun from giving Leto shelter to give birth. But the floating, barren island of Delos took pity on her. There she gave birth to Artemis, the chaste goddess of the hunt, the wilderness, and the moon, a fierce protector of the young. A day later, her twin brother Apollo was born, the radiant god of music, poetry, prophecy, medicine, and the sun. Zeus and Hera also had children together, though their relationships were often fraught. Ares was the god of war, but unlike his strategic sister Athena, he represented the brutal, chaotic, and bloodthirsty aspects of battle. Hephaestus, the god of fire, metalworking, and invention, was born lame, and Hera, ashamed of him, cast him from Olympus. He was a master craftsman, the architect of the gods' palaces, and the forger of their weapons. Other key Olympians included Hermes, the son of Zeus, and a nymph named Maia. He was the messenger of the gods, a quick-witted trickster, the god of travelers, merchants, and thieves, with his winged sandals and herald's staff. And there was Aphrodite, born from the sea foam, the captivating goddess of love and beauty, who was married to the unfortunate Hephaestus, but had a long and passionate affair with the fiery Ares. The final Olympian to take his seat was Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, and ecstasy. He was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, Semele. When Hera tricked Semele into asking to see Zeus in his true divine form, the mortal woman was instantly incinerated by his glory. Zeus managed to save the unborn Dionysus and stitched him into his own thigh to complete his gestation. Because of this, Dionysus was known as the twice-born god, a wanderer who brought both joy and madness to the world. This family of 12 gods, powerful, flawed, and deeply human in their passions, now ruled the cosmos from their home on the cloud-shrouded peak of Mount Olympus. But their reign was not without challenges. Gaia, the ancient Earth Mother, was not pleased. She was furious that her Titan children remained imprisoned in Tartarus. In her anger, she birthed a new race of beings to challenge the Olympians, the Gigantes, or giants. They were immense, powerful beings, some with snakes for legs, and they were born to wage war. They launched a massive assault on Olympus, hurling entire mountains and flaming oak trees at the home of the gods. This war was known as the Gigantomachy. The gods fought back with all their might, but an ancient prophecy declared that the giants could not be killed by gods alone. A mortal hero would have to fight alongside them for victory to be achieved. And so the gods called upon Zeus's most famous mortal son, a hero of immense strength and courage, Heracles. With Heracles fighting by their side, the Olympians were finally able to defeat the giants and secure their rule over the universe once and for all, or so they thought. Gaia had one last terrifying child. She mated with Tartarus itself and gave birth to Typhon, the most fearsome monster in all of Greek mythology. He was a creature of unimaginable size. His head brushed the stars. His arms stretched from east to west, and in place of fingers, he had 100 dragon heads. Fire flashed from his eyes, and his voice was a cacophony of hisses, roars, and bellows. When the Olympians saw him approach for the first and only time, they fled in terror, transforming themselves into animals and scattering across Egypt. Only Zeus and perhaps Athena stood their ground. A battle of cosmic scale ensued, a storm of thunderbolts against a storm of fire and rock. Zeus was momentarily defeated and had his sinews cut from his body, but with the help of Hermes, he recovered them. Finally, in a climactic battle, Zeus pursued Typhon to Sicily and hurled the entire Mount Etna on top of him, trapping him beneath the earth. To this day, it is said that the volcanic eruptions of Mount Etna are the fiery breath of the monster Typhon, still raging in his eternal prison. After this final, terrible challenge, the reign of the Olympians was truly secure. The cosmos was ordered, the great monsters were defeated, and the gods were free to turn their attention to a new and fascinating creation, mortal kind. Part 4: The Creation of Mortals and the Age of Heroes. The creation of humanity is a story told in a few different ways, but the most common one involves two of the second generation Titans who had been spared, the brothers Prometheus and Epimetheus. Their names were telling. Prometheus meant forethought, and Epimetheus meant afterthought. The gods tasked the two brothers with populating the earth with creatures. Epimetheus, impulsive and eager, took on the job of giving the various animals their gifts. He gave them fur for warmth, claws for defense, wings for flight, and shells for protection. He worked with such enthusiasm that by the time he got to the last creation, a creature made in the image of the gods, he had run out of all the good gifts. This creature was man, naked, weak, and defenseless. Prometheus, who had forethought, looked upon the plight of his creation with pity. He saw that they would not survive without help. So, in an act of profound defiance, he decided to give them a gift that the gods had reserved for themselves. He traveled to the heavens, some say to the sun chariot of Apollo, others to the forge of Hephaestus, and he lit a torch. He hid the divine fire inside a hollow stalk of fennel and brought it down to earth. Fire changed everything for humanity. It gave them warmth in the cold. It allowed them to cook their food, to ward off predators, and to forge tools and weapons. It gave them the light of a hearth in the darkness, a center for community. It was the spark of technology, of art, of civilization itself. Zeus was enraged by this act. He saw the fire not as a gift, but as a theft. He saw the potential of mortals growing too great, too close to the gods. His punishment for Prometheus was terrible. He had the Titan chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains. Every day, a great eagle would fly down and eat his liver. And every night, because he was immortal, his liver would grow back, only for the torment to begin again the next day for all eternity. But Zeus's revenge was not just for Prometheus, it was for humanity as well. He ordered Hephaestus to create a new being, a woman sculpted from earth and water. All the gods and goddesses bestowed upon her gifts. Aphrodite gave her beauty and charm. Hermes gave her a cunning and deceitful mind. Athena taught her the arts of weaving. They named her Pandora, which means all gifted. Then Zeus gave Pandora a beautiful ornate jar, sometimes later called a box, and warned her never, ever to open it. He sent her down to earth as a gift to Epimetheus. Despite his brother Prometheus's warning never to accept a gift from Zeus, Epimetheus, the afterthought, was captivated by Pandora's beauty and welcomed her. Pandora's curiosity, a gift from the gods themselves, gnawed at her. What could be inside this beautiful container? Finally, she could resist no longer. She lifted the lid. Instantly, out flew all the evils and sorrows that had been trapped inside, plagues that would forever afflict humanity, sickness, despair, greed, war, old age, and suffering. They swarmed out into the world, invisible and silent, to bring misery to mankind. Terrified, Pandora slammed the lid shut, but it was too late. Everything had escaped. Everything, that is, except for one small thing that fluttered at the very bottom of the jar. Pandora looked inside and saw it, a small, hopeful spirit. Its name was Elpis, Hope. It was the only comfort left to mortals in a world now filled with hardship. Thus began the long and often difficult relationship between gods and mortals. The gods would often meddle, help, or hinder the lives of humans who lived through different ages. First was the Golden Age under Cronus, then the Silver Age, where humans were less noble and forgot to honor the gods. Then came the Bronze Age, a time of terrible warfare, where men armed with bronze weapons destroyed one another. This was followed by a special period, the Age of Heroes. This was a time when the gods frequently interacted with mortals, and their children, the demigods, walked the earth performing incredible feats and embarking on epic quests. These are the stories that form the heart of Greek mythology. One of the most foundational of these tales is the story of Persephone. She was the beautiful daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. One day, while picking flowers in a meadow, the earth suddenly split open. From the chasm, her own uncle, Hades, emerged on his dark chariot. He had long watched her from his shadowy realm and had fallen in love. He seized the terrified goddess and carried her down to be his queen in the underworld. Her was frantic with grief. She searched the entire world for her daughter, neglecting her duties. Without her, the crops failed, the trees withered, and the earth grew cold and barren. A long, terrible winter fell upon the world, and humanity began to starve. Seeing the devastation, Zeus finally intervened. He sent Hermes down to the underworld to command Hades to release Persephone. Hades agreed, but with a trick. Before she left, he offered Persephone a single pomegranate seed to eat. Unaware of the consequences, she ate it. This small act bound her to the underworld forever. A compromise had to be reached. It was decided that for part of the year, Persephone would live with her mother on Olympus. During this time, Demeter is joyful, and the earth blooms with spring and summer. But for the months corresponding to the seeds she ate, she must return to the underworld to be with her husband. During this time, Demeter grieves, and the earth becomes cold and barren, bringing autumn and winter. It is a story of loss and reunion, a myth that explains the gentle repeating cycle of the seasons. The greatest of all the mortal heroes was Heracles, son of Zeus and the mortal woman Alcmene. His life was one of immense strength and even greater tragedy, marked by the relentless hatred of Hera. In a fit of madness sent by the jealous goddess, Heracles killed his own wife and children. To atone for this terrible act, he was assigned a series of impossible tasks by the oracle at Delphi, the 12 labors. These labors took him to the very edges of the known world. He had to slay the Nemean lion, whose hide was impenetrable to all weapons. He had to kill the multi-headed Hydra, whose heads grew back every time one was cut off. He had to capture the golden hind of Artemis and the fearsome Erymanthian boar. He had to clean the massive, filthy stables of Augeas in a single day, which he did by diverting 2 rivers. He had to defeat the man-eating Stymphalian birds. He had to capture the Cretan bull and the mares of Diomedes. He had to retrieve the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. He had to capture the cattle of the three-bodied monster Darien. His final two labors were the most difficult, taking him beyond the mortal realm. He had to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides, which involved tricking the Titan Atlas into getting them for him. And for his final, most daunting task, he had to descend into the underworld itself and bring back its guard dog, the terrifying three-headed Cerberus. Heracles accomplished them all, and through his suffering and perseverance, he eventually won his immortality and a place on Mount Olympus. Another great hero was Perseus, also a son of Zeus. Cast out to sea as a baby with his mother Danae, he was fated to kill his grandfather. To get rid of him, a wicked king sent him on an impossible quest to bring back the head of the Gorgon Medusa, a monster whose gaze could turn any living thing to stone. Aided by the gods, who gave him a mirrored shield, winged sandals, and a helmet of invisibility, Perseus succeeded. On his journey home, he rescued the beautiful Princess Andromeda from a sea monster and made her his wife. Then there was the tale of Theseus, the great hero of Athens. His most famous exploit was volunteering to be one of the tributes sent to Crete, to be sacrificed to the Minotaur, a monstrous creature, half man and half bull, that lived in the center of a vast, inescapable maze called the Labyrinth. With the help of the Cretan princess Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread to find his way out, Theseus navigated the dark corridors, slew the Minotaur, and freed Athens from its terrible tribute. And there was the grandest adventure of all, the quest for the Golden Fleece. A hero named Jason was tasked with retrieving this magical treasure from the distant, barbaric land of Colchis. He assembled the greatest heroes of his generation, including Heracles, the swift-footed Atalanta, and the musician Orpheus, and they set sail on a ship called the Argo. Their journey was long and perilous, facing clashing rocks, deadly sirens, and harpies. In Colchis, Jason succeeded only with the help of the powerful sorceress Medea, the king's daughter, who fell in love with him. Their story, however, ends in betrayal and profound tragedy, a dark reminder of the passions that drive both mortals and gods. These heroes, and many others, filled the world with their deeds. Their stories are a tapestry of courage, trickery, tragedy, and the constant, often unpredictable influence of the gods above. They represent humanity's struggle against fate, monsters, and their own flawed natures, all played out on a grand stage set by the Olympians. Part 5. The Great War and the Long Journey Home. Of all the stories of the heroic age, none is greater or more tragic than the Trojan War. It was a conflict that drew in nearly every hero and king of the era, and it was started, as so many troubles were, by the vanity of the gods. It all began at the wedding of the sea nymph Tethys and the mortal king Peleus. Every god and goddess was invited, except one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Enraged at being snubbed, she crafted a beautiful golden apple and inscribed it upon the words, "To the fairest." She then tossed it among the goddesses at the wedding feast. Immediately, 3 powerful goddesses laid claim to it: Hera, the stately queen of the gods; Athena, the wise warrior goddess; and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. They argued fiercely, and none could settle the dispute. They brought the matter to Zeus, but he wisely refused to judge. Instead, he declared that the decision must be made by a mortal, a young prince of Troy named Paris, who was living as a shepherd on Mount Ida, said to be the finest judge of beauty in the world. The 3 goddesses appeared before the astonished shepherd and offered him bribes for his favor. Hera offered him power and dominion over all of Asia. Athena offered him wisdom and victory in every battle. But Aphrodite made him a simple, irresistible promise. She would give him the most beautiful mortal woman in the world for his wife. Paris, a young man ruled by his heart, awarded the golden apple to Aphrodite. The most beautiful mortal woman in the world was Helen, Queen of Sparta. She was already married to a powerful king named Menelaus. But a promise from a goddess is a powerful thing. Aphrodite arranged for Paris to visit Sparta, where he was welcomed as a guest. Under the spell of the goddess of love, Helen fell for the handsome Trojan prince, and together they fled back to the high-walled city of Troy, taking much of the Spartan treasury with them. When Menelaus discovered his wife and his treasure were gone, he was consumed by rage. He went to his brother, Agamemnon, the High King of Mycenae, the most powerful ruler in Greece. They invoked an old oath that all of Helen's former suitors had sworn to defend her marriage, no matter whom she chose. And so, the call to arms went out. 1,000 ships were launched, carrying the greatest warriors of Greece. There was the cunning Odysseus, king of Ithaca, the wise old Nestor, the mighty Ajax, and the greatest warrior of them all, the swift-footed Achilles, a demigod son of the sea nymph Thetis, who was nearly invincible in battle. The massive Greek army sailed across the Aegean and landed on the shores of Troy. But Troy was a mighty city, protected by impenetrable walls built by Apollo and Poseidon themselves. It was defended by its own great heroes, led by the noble and courageous Prince Hector, the brother of Paris. And so began the siege. For 10 long, weary years, the war raged on. The gods themselves took sides. Hera and Athena, still bitter about the judgment of Paris, supported the Greeks. Aphrodite and Apollo supported the Trojans. The war was fought not just on the dusty plains before the city, but also on the celestial stage of Olympus, as gods and goddesses interfered, protected their favorites, and schemed against one another. The war saw countless acts of heroism and tragedy. The central story of the conflict, as told in the epic poem The Iliad, revolves around the rage of Achilles. After a dispute with King Agamemnon, Achilles refused to fight, and without their greatest champion, the Greeks began to lose badly. Only when his dearest friend, Patroclus, was killed by Hector, did Achilles return to the battlefield, his heart filled with grief and a terrible, burning need for revenge. He hunted down and killed Hector in a legendary duel, and in his rage desecrated the noble prince's body, dragging it behind his chariot around the walls of Troy. Even with Hector gone, the city did not fall. Achilles himself was later killed, shot in his one vulnerable spot, his heel, by an arrow fired by Paris and guided by the god Apollo. After 10 years, it seemed the war would never end. It was then that the cleverest of the Greeks, Odysseus, devised a plan. The Greeks would pretend to give up and sail away, but they would leave behind a gift for the Trojans, a giant, hollow wooden horse. The Trojans, seeing the Greek fleet gone, rejoiced. They debated what to do with the strange horse. Some, like the priest Laocoon, warned it was a trick. He famously said, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts," before he and his sons were silenced, dragged into the sea by giant serpents sent by a god. They took this as a sign that the horse was a sacred offering. They dragged the colossal statue inside their impenetrable walls and celebrated their victory with a great feast. That night, as the city slept in a drunken stupor, a hidden door in the horse's belly opened. Odysseus and a handful of the best Greek warriors climbed out. They crept through the silent streets and killed the sentries and opened the city gates. The Greek fleet, which had only pretended to leave, had sailed back under the cover of darkness. The army poured into the city. The sack of Troy was brutal and complete. The city that had stood for generations was looted and burned to the ground. Its men were killed, and its women and children were taken into slavery. The long, tragic war was finally over. But the story does not end there. For the heroes who had survived, the journey home was often as perilous as the war itself. Agamemnon returned home only to be murdered by his treacherous wife. Many others were lost in storms sent by angry gods. The most famous of these journeys was that of Odysseus. His 10-year voyage home to his island kingdom of Ithaca is a story of its own, an epic called the Odyssey. He was cursed by the god Poseidon, and his journey was a long series of trials and temptations. Had to outsmart the giant one-eyed Cyclops, Polyphemus. He was captured by the sorceress Circe, who turned his men into pigs. He had to travel to the land of the dead to consult the spirit of the prophet Tiresias. He had to sail past the sirens, whose enchanting song lured sailors to their deaths by having his men plug their ears with wax, while he had himself tied to the mast so he could listen and not be lost. He navigated between the six-headed sea monster Scylla and the deadly whirlpool Charybdis. He was shipwrecked and held captive for 7 years as the lover of the beautiful nymph Calypso on her remote island. All the while, back in Ithaca, his faithful wife Penelope was besieged by suitors who, believing Odysseus to be dead, demanded she choose one of them to marry and take over the kingdom. For 20 years, 10 at war, 10 on his journey, she waited, fending them off with her cunning, weaving a burial shroud by day and secretly unraveling it each night. Finally, after 2 decades away, Odysseus returned. Disguised as an old beggar, he found his palace overrun and his family in peril. With the help of his now grown son Telemachus and a few loyal servants, he revealed himself, slaughtered all the suitors in a great battle, and was at last reunited with his wife, restoring order to his kingdom. The end of the Trojan War and the return of its heroes mark the end of the heroic age. The world of demigods and epic quests began to fade. The gods would slowly withdraw from the daily affairs of mortals, their presence becoming more distant, more mysterious. The world was becoming less a place of myth and more a world of men, left to grapple with the legacy of hope and sorrow the gods had left them. Part 6. The Twilight of the Gods and the Echoes of Myth. As the last ships of the Trojan War found their way home or were lost to the sea, a quiet change began to settle over the world. The great defining events of the mythical age were over. The cosmos had been born from chaos. The Titans had been overthrown. The Olympians had established their order and defended it against monsters and giants. Humanity had been created, gifted with fire, and burdened with hope. And the great heroes had lived, fought, and died, their stories forever woven into the fabric of the world. There were, of course, other stories, smaller tales, quieter tragedies. The story of King Midas, who wished that everything he touched would turn to gold, only to find he could no longer eat, drink, or embrace his beloved daughter. The tale of the brilliant inventor Daedalus and his son Icarus, who flew too close to the sun on wings of wax and feathers. The heartbreaking story of the musician Orpheus, who traveled to the underworld to retrieve his dead wife Eurydice and lost her again at the last moment by breaking the one condition he looked back. These stories and countless others filled the spaces between the great epics. They were tales of caution, of love, of hubris, and of fate. But they signaled a shift. The world was no longer a place where heroes wrestled with gods on a daily basis. The direct, tangible interactions grew fewer and farther in between. Gods on Mount Olympus continued their eternal lives of feasting, quarreling, and intrigue, but their focus seemed to shift away from the mortal world. They became more like distant, powerful forces of nature than an active, meddling family. Zeus still ruled the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Apollo's sun still rose each morning, but their presence was felt more in the rustle of the leaves in a sacred grove, the fury of a storm at sea, or the spark of inspiration in a poet's mind. The Iron Age, the final age of man, was now fully ascendant. It was the age in which the ancient poets believed they themselves lived, an age of toil and misery, where justice and honor were scarce. It was a world that felt farther from the gods, a world where mortals were left more to their own devices, to build their cities, fight their wars, and write their philosophies, without a demigod to lead them or a monster to unite them. The great monsters were gone, slain by the heroes of old. The labyrinth was empty. The Hydra's swamp was still. Medusa's head was turned to a stone effigy on Athena's shield. The world was, in a way, tamer, safer perhaps, but also a little less magical. The myths themselves began to change. They were no longer just religious truths, but also stories told for entertainment, for moral instruction, for understanding the complexities of the human heart. Philosophers began to question the old tales, to look for rational explanations for the world, for a new kind of truth not found on Mount Olympus. And yet, the myths never truly disappeared. They simply sank deeper into the cultural soil, becoming the bedrock of Western civilization. The names of the planets in our solar system echo the names of the Roman gods, who were themselves direct counterparts of the Greek Olympians. The language of psychology speaks of the Oedipus complex. Our art and literature are filled with allusions to Narcissus, the sirens, and the Trojan horse. The journey we have taken tonight from the vast silent darkness of chaos to the final fading echoes of the heroic age is the story of how a culture tried to understand the world. It is a story of creation, of rebellion, of order, of love, of war, and of the profound, unbridgeable, yet ever-present distance between the mortal and the divine. These are not stories that demand to be remembered perfectly. They are meant to be absorbed, to drift through the mind like clouds across the sky. They are the dreams of a civilization filled with impossible beauty and deep, resonant sorrow. And now, our long, quiet journey is at its end. We have walked from the beginning of all things through the golden reign of Titans and the epic wars of the gods. We have stood with heroes on the plains of Troy and sailed with them across wine-dark seas. Now, let these stories go. Let them drift and dissolve like sea foam on the shore. Let the names of gods and heroes become soft, distant sounds like the whisper of wind in ancient olive trees. The great cycles of myth, of birth and destruction, of night and day, of winter and spring, are mirrored in the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Feel the quiet darkness behind your eyes. This is your own personal chaos, a place of peace, of rest, and of pure potential. There are no monsters here, no quests to fulfill. There is only stillness. The thunderbolts of Zeus are quiet now. The forges of Hephaestus are cool. The songs of the sirens have faded into the gentle hum of the night. All that is left is the deep, restorative silence. Allow yourself to sink into it, as if you are sinking into a soft bed of moss in a forgotten forest. Let go of the thread of the story. Let go of the thread of your thoughts. There is nothing left to do but rest, to drift, to dream.